This language now falls under Section 10, and it just says the City Council may grant a franchise to operate a ferry boat service. 10B has been modified a bit. In the existing ordinance, it provides that no person shall operate a ferry boat service, nor shall any person provide a ferry boat service. And that same language is being carried over. But the existing ordinance says, or acquire ownership of or control of a ferry boat company in the city. That language has been struck because we don't see a continuing need for that. And so it appears to be surplus language, so it's being struck. And then again, city with a small c is changed to city with a big C to make it clear that it's the city of Mackinac Island we're speaking of. Section 10C is basically the same as it is in the existing ordinance. City with a small c is changed to city with a big C. And the language city harbor has been struck because the actual city boundaries under the charter go out farther than the city harbor. So that language was, reference to city harbor was unnecessary. Section 11 is based on Section 10 of the existing ordinance. And it now, under the proposal, will read, for the ferry boat season commencing in the spring of 2011, the applicant for a franchise to operate a ferry boat service shall be made in writing and delivered to the city clerk not later than April 4, 2011. For any ferry boat season commencing after December 31, 2011, the applicant for a franchise to operate a ferry boat service shall be made in writing to the city clerk not later than February 1st, preceding the ferry boat season for which the application is made. The application shall include such information as requested by the City Council, including but not limited to. And then subparts 1, 2, 3, and 4 are basically the same as they are in the existing ordinance. 5 is added language that says a schedule of proposed rates, fares, and charges. And B has some language that's different. The proposed language will read, the application shall be accompanied by an application fee established by ordinance. And what we have struck is the sentence that says in the existing ordinance, if a ferry boat service will be operated in such an irregular fashion so that a time schedule of services is not available, no such schedule of services need be filed with the application. So that sentence has been struck. There is a paragraph below that that is a modification of the language in the current ordinance. The proposed language will read that the application must be signed by an individual with authority to legally bind the ferry boat company and provide that the company, its officers, agents will operate in accordance to the terms of this ordinance. Section 13 was Section 12, and Part A of that has been struck, and that formerly read, upon the approval of the filed schedule of services or waiver of the same by the Council and receipt of the application fee, the Council shall issue a franchise as is required by this division. Instead, A will read, upon the granting of such franchise, the city clerk shall issue a certificate evidencing the existence of such franchise, which must be publicly displayed on all ferry boats providing a ferry boat service. Subpart B is the same. 14 of the proposed ordinance is the same as Section 13 of the existing ordinance, with the exception that a new final sentence is added, which reads, a grant of a franchise for a term of years shall create no right to a franchise after the expiration of the term of years. Section 15 equates to Section 14 in the existing ordinance. Section A of the existing ordinance is being struck and will be replaced by the new A. The A that's being struck provided as follows: during the term of any franchise granted pursuant to this division for the operation of ferry boat service during the regular ferry boat season, the person granted such franchise shall pay to the city in consideration of the granting of such franchise a monthly franchise fee in the amount of 2.5% of the gross receipts from all charges for providing ferry boat service. That is being struck because now, again, there's only one ferry boat season, the regular season, and the franchise fee is 7%. So that's reflected in the new subparagraph A. Subparagraph B is essentially the same, with the exception that city, again, is capitalized. C is the same as the existing ordinance. D is the same as the existing ordinance. E is new. And E provides as follows: the council may examine any and all books, accounts, records, and papers of any ferry boat company and audit the same, and it shall be the duty of any such ferry boat company to furnish to the council's proper officers, employees, and representatives any and all data in such form as the council shall require in relation to the ferry boat company's investment, income, operating expenses, and such other statistical data as the council may require. 16 is new. 16 will provide as follows: a franchise granted pursuant to this ordinance may be revoked by the city council in the event a franchisee defaults in its performance of the terms and provisions of this ordinance. Such revocation shall not be effective until the franchisee has been advised of the violation and provided the hearing before the city council. The city council decision shall be based on a preponderance of the evidence. 17 is the same as the existing ordinance, with the exception that city is now capitalized. 18 is the same, with the same change of city is capitalized and the word article is replaced by ordinance. 19 is the same except city is capitalized. 20, severability, is new. It was in the ordinance at one time in the past, and at some point apparently was dropped, but that will read as follows: should any section, clause, or provision of this ordinance be declared to be invalid by a court of record, the same shall not affect the validity of the ordinance as a whole or any part thereof, other than the part so declared invalid. So those are the changes that have been proposed. There are a few additional changes that have been suggested that are relatively minor in nature, and we can tell you what those are, and I think Tom has a draft that has those in them. Is that correct, Tom?
I do.
Okay.
There are really three very minor suggested changes in the ordinance. When this was sent over to you folks on Monday, it was also sent to the boat companies and requested input there. We received some input, but Mike and I filtered through some of it, and the three changes that we feel would help clear things up would be to define what a person is in the definitions, because we do use that term elsewhere in the ordinance. And so we've defined person to mean a natural person, corporation, trust, partnership, incorporated or unincorporated association, or other legal entity, which is a fairly common statutory definition. At section 7, subparagraphs B and C, added two words to B at the end. Just said for approval. This, it was implied, but we thought we should be more clear and say that the scheduled services must be filed to the city council for approval in B. And in C, I just inserted one word, approved. So we read: a ferry boat company granted a franchise must provide ferry boat service during the entire ferry boat season and must operate in accordance with its approved scheduled services as is on file. And the last minor change is in section 9C. The draft you have in front of you says, no ferry boat company shall make any charge for passenger tickets that is inconsistent with its complete schedule of rates, fares, and charges for all classes, and we eliminated the word all. We didn't want to imply that you had to be inconsistent with all of the classes in order to be in violation. So we eliminated one word there. We also submitted on Monday a proposed application and franchise that had very few changes from what we had last year, other than the obvious ones, because we don't have the 2 seasons anymore. And since that time, actually, in just looking at that in your franchise, there was reference in section 3 of the franchise that frankly I didn't understand, that talked about not having to maintain your schedule for 4 days. And I know it related to a previous franchise ordinance, and I just felt, if you look at your franchise copy at section 3, you'll see that. And in the copies I brought with me today, I'll delete that, because I think it's confusing and unnecessary at this point. It seemed to have something to do with being able to provide additional services beyond your schedule, and that's no longer an issue now. You said provide all the service you want, you just haven't done your schedule. So I have a clean copy of what would be the final draft of the ordinance, the application, and the franchise for everybody that contains those few changes that I just mentioned.
This is simple compared to debarking effects, 300.
Council, questions with Mike or Tom on any of the changes or proposed changes?
Section 4, the violations and penalties, do you think those are adequate to prevent somebody from just deciding to run without a franchise agreement and to do a whole series of court proceedings, delay paying any franchise fee for the entire summer?
If someone did do that, first of all, they would be guilty of a misdemeanor, which would be charged with a misdemeanor every day. In addition to that, injunctive relief could be sought from the court to terminate the service. So I think the city does have adequate powers.
What's the fine for misdemeanor?
$500 is the maximum fine.
Other questions?
I had one on section 15E.